Okay, so you got a lot of money invested in your new dirt bike or your good used dirt bike. Here's some top ways to make sure this thing lasts a long time for you. Okay, so dirt bikes, they do wear out, okay? Cars last a lot longer, they cost a lot more as well. Dirt bikes, we're a lot tougher on them than we are cars. We pound them, we're pulling the clutch in and slipping it and slamming into gears. We're way harder on these things. And if you're like me on the trail, you're really hard on them. So dropping them and being mean to them, all that kind of stuff. So with whatever bike you're riding, 2-stroke or 4-stroke, the number one thing you can do is air filter. You want to have a good, clean air filter in there and not let any dirt get into the motor. Even though it's a dirt bike, we don't want dirt inside. Okay, so the next one is proper oil changes. Keeping fresh oil in the motor will let it last a lot longer, especially on 4-strokes. 2 strokes to oil in your crankcase is mainly helping your gears and your clutch. So not as critical, and it lasts a lot longer than it does in 4-stroke engines. But you want to keep fresh oil in there. People ask me, when is the right time to change the oil? A lot. It's totally different for everybody. A pro, 1 hour. It could be. If he's in a sand, muddy track, it could be 1 hour. It's time to change the oil. With dual sporting guy taking his time, he could go 20 hours. So there's a big range in there. One of the best ways to tell is when you change your oil, keep track of your hours, and you change it and see how black it's coming out. If it's really black, it's not like a car. It shouldn't be black, okay? Or your diesel truck. When it comes out and it's really black, try bumping it up an hour before that. Keep working your way till it starts coming out like a dark, dark brown. It's not turning black yet. That'll give you a little gauge of when you're spinning that oil. Okay, so the next one is running good gas. So in the 4-strokes, you run a premium gas from a good gas station, good premium, and you can even mix in some avgas or some race gases with your gas. But you want to have good gas that you don't let get old. You know, in the heat in the summer, they can really go away. You want to store it in metal cans when you can, if it's going to be stored for a long time. You don't want your gas going bad. Everybody smelled old gas. 3-4 weeks, a lot of times the gas can be old. So the big thing is you want good fresh gas in there. And in your 2-strokes, you want to make sure that your gas is properly mixed. That's the key to 2-strokes, is that you're running a good ratio and a good quality oil. We have videos talking about the ratios you should run in 2-strokes for different size bikes, and also talking about gases and storing those. So check out our 2-stroke gas mixing if you're interested in that. But in a 2-stroke, that's the biggest way it's going to last longer, is keeping a good mix in there and good jetting. Okay, so with gas, as I mentioned, you want to have fresh gas. So that means when you park your bike, especially if it has a carburetor, you want to turn the gas off, drain the gas out. You can lay it over on both sides. You can run it out. Some carburetors have a drain, easy Phillips head screw. You can drain the gas out easily, especially those small bikes, TTRs. You always want to drain that gas out of the carburetor because they will clog up those little pilot jets really quickly and easily. So drain that old gas out. So on 4-strokes, there's fuel filters. On a KTM style bike, there's a filter inline. That's easy to change out and probably something you should put into your regular maintenance plan, or at least keep those little filters with you. The filters in the tank are somewhat difficult to rebuild just as preventive maintenance. Most people wait until they start running bad. We'll swap out a fuel filter or a fuel pump. Okay, so most everyone likes to have a clean bike. I sure do. So when you wash your bike and prep it, one of the big things you want to be careful of, we have good videos that show you how to wash your bike, give you tips on it. So you can hit us up or find those, and we'll give you links to them. So we lay our bike down on both sides, and even though it looks like we're washing for a long time, we try hard not to be hitting the power washer right into the wheel bearings, into the linkage, the swing arm bearings, the steering stem bearings. We're trying not to blast those types of pivot areas for a long period of time. We want to just brush over those, and we're trying to get the dirt off the plastic and under the frame, under the engine. We're trying to get that stuff off without hitting those pivot areas. Now, when we're done washing, we bring the bike in and we blow it off with air in all those critical spots that I mentioned. All the electronics, we're trying to get the water off all the electronics under the seat. And when you can pull the seat off, it's nice. You pull the seat off and you can blow off all those connections, and behind your number plate or your headlight, you're going to blow all those off. So that's a big thing, is keeping those electronics in control and keeping water out of all of your bearing areas. So that will help you. And then also blowing off your chain, adding a little bit of oil or WD-40 after you wash, and blowing that off with air will help get the water and rust out of there so your chain will last longer. We have videos talking about running oil on the chain, and you can have that as you set your chain tension at the same time. That's a good thing to do. Okay, so now as I talked about getting water into those areas, if you have a new or used bike, if you have a brand new bike, one of the first things I suggest is in the first month or two, most everybody wants to go ride it straight away, right? First month or three, you need to grease all your bearing linkages. Your steering stem bearings, your swing arm bearings, your linkage bearings. It's a pain to do. No one wants to do it. I don't want to do it, and I'm pretty good at doing it. And no one wants to take the time to take it all apart and just grease them. But if you do, your bearings will last 5-10 times longer if you grease them. They typically do not come with enough grease from the OEM manufacturers. We've seen brand new 22, 23 bikes with very little grease on the stem bearings, and with just a few bike washings, you can't keep the water from getting in there, and sure enough, they're shot. So if they have good grease in there, packed in there, I try to tell guys once a year, it's a good idea to go grease your bearings, especially stem bearings and lower shock bearings. Those would be the two main ones I would do. Now, so if you have your suspension off, so you're gonna get suspension worked on, you're gonna have your forks off, your shock off, that's a great time to do your steering stem bearings. Everything's a little easier to work with. It's all light and easy up here. You don't have to worry about dealing with the forks since they're already off. And same thing with the swing arm and shock. It's a great time to do it. So keep fresh grease in your bearings. They'll last indefinitely. I've seen you could put 10, 15 years on your pivot bearings if they're properly greased. The next big one that gets overlooked a lot is having fresh brake and clutch fluid in all your things. And this can vary depending upon how hard you're riding, but most people at least once a year. And if you're racing, it could be monthly if you're racing pretty actively. For us, on these types of bikes, usually twice a year. You know, every 6 months, 4 to 6 months. We have a few bikes that we bounce between, so none of them get a ton of hours, but the fluid does get old as well, and it breaks down. So it's nice to have fresh fluid. We have videos talking about how to bleed those. So you want to have fresh fluid. That'll keep the brake system and clutch systems lasting a lot longer. Okay, the next one is fresh fluids in your shock and forks. You want to keep fresh fluids in there. A lot of people think the stuff, if it doesn't leak, it's fine. With 40, 50, 60 hours, 70 hours, the stuff really breaks down inside and starts eating away at all the critical components. So when you do have to get suspension work done, you're going to have to replace parts. And sometimes even a shock body can be worn out inside so bad that it has to be replaced, which is very costly. So fresh fluid in the forks and shock is a great way to have your suspension last a lot longer. Okay, so especially if you're riding off-road trail riding, protection pieces, but you want to be careful of adding a lot of weight to the bike. I carry enough weight. I don't want to add more weight to the bike. So wraparound handguards on trail bikes to me are great. There's some people that worry that they're going to get their hands caught in and it's going to make them crash worse and break their arm and die or whatever. I'm willing to take the chance because, and I personally have had great results with them, is because when you crash, fall over, this takes the hit, doesn't ruin your throttle tube, your brake lever, your clutch lever, and you can still finish the day of riding. You just smash your guards. These are really good and somewhat lightweight for a wraparound style handguard. So like to get good protection on the bike. Radiators are another big one. Radiators get bent easily. And on this bike, ICW has strengthened up the radiators for us because a lot of the radiator braces can be a bit bulky and heavy. So we like radiator braces. Skid plates can also provide protection for the bottom of your frame and your engine. Can keep the water pump protected and those types of things. So those are ways your bike can look and last a long time. On these steel frame bikes, having frame guards on there will keep you from rubbing the paint off, and it has it still looking nice. Okay, so that's our top 10 that I think turned into 11 or so. I don't have a counter going. So of ways to help you have your bike last longer. Now, if you're racing and you know you're gonna just sell the bike in 6 or 12 months, your attitude can be a little different. And that's why you have to be careful if you're buying used bikes, especially from racers. That's why I'm always cautious of that. Pay attention to who you're buying your bike from, because a lot of times they have that attitude. Now, if you plan on keeping your bike for 3, 5, 7, 10 years, you plan on having it for a long time, all those things I mentioned will all help you have it last a lot longer. Also, I would suggest staying on your wheels, your rims, spokes. I didn't mention that before. That's like a bonus one of number 12 or so. Make sure you stay on your spokes and use a good spoke wrench. We like the Fast Company spoke wrench. That really helps keep your spokes in good shape. Typically, especially on trail bikes, once once they're set after the first couple months of riding, you've adjusted them a few times, they don't hardly ever move on trail riding. On motocross, we'll have to check them a little bit more often, and that goes into our post-washing ritual, where we bring the bike in, we check it over, we feel for anything like that. That's a good time when we blow that bike off and wipe it down, that we're looking for anything. And if we don't have time to fix it right then, we put tape on the rear fender and write down anything that needs to be done. We put down some blue tape, a Sharpie, write down what needs to be fixed over the next few days or a week or two before you ride again. And that will help you a ton, is making a note. Then you know, I got to fix that before I ride. So hopefully that helps you out, and we'll see you later on the track or the trail. onX Off-Road, know where to go with the #1 GPS app. Access 500,000 miles of trails and roads, open dates and public lands. The Elite version even shows landowners and property boundaries. Download the onX Off-Road app. To save 20%, use the discount code DBTV1.